Hi everyone, I'm Miss Elle, welcome back. Today's video is part 1 of my new series where I go through and highlight the common mistakes students tend to make with their content knowledge in VCE Business Management. Today we're just going to focus on dot points 1 through 3 of Unit 3, Area of Study 1. I'm then also going to show you how that content has actually been assessed over the past few years of VCE exams. So let's get started. Now this video isn't about going through all of the theory you need for each dot point. Instead, I'm just going to pull out the parts that commonly cause trouble for students. So I recommend grabbing your notes, grabbing a highlighter and annotating as we go today. For dot point 1, I have a few small observations of the mistakes students tend to make. For example, when dividing businesses into the public and private sector, all too often students accidentally identify a public company as belonging to the public sector. The rule of thumb here is that a public sector company is only one that is owned by the government. So a government business enterprise is the only type of organisation that you will place into that public sector category. Everything else is a private sector business because it's owned either by an individual, a group of individuals, or an institution. When using the terms limited and unlimited liability, it's really important that you actually say what those terms mean for the owner of the business. So when you're finishing your sentence and you're saying private companies experience limited liability, which means that the owner's personal assets are not threatened by the financial stability of the company. Without finishing that, raising the point that it has limited liability will not earn you a mark. Many students confuse themselves by thinking that a sole trader can't have any employees. That's incorrect. A sole trader can definitely operate under that structure and hire others to help them with the daily running of the business. They just remain as the one and only owner of that business. One of the aims of a government business enterprise is to control the pricing of a particular good or service for its citizens. They are still aiming to make a profit though. Think of Australia Post. They are the only business that's permitted to have physical mailboxes on our street corners to deliver our letters. This means they control the price of that service. Now this is up for some debate, but the idea is that if we did permit a private company to come in and take control of this service, there is nothing stopping them from pushing up the prices to a point where the average Australian citizen could no longer afford it, which for an essential service would not be acceptable.
Dot point 1, types of businesses, has been assessed for the past 3 years' worth of VCE Busman exams. It has also always been the very first question of the entire paper as well. Last year, question 1A asked students to outline the characteristics of a private limited company. Given the S on the end of characteristics and the 2-mark allocation, this implied students needed to outline more than one to gain full marks. In 2018, question 1A asked for students to define the term partnership as a type of business. So the same dot point was used, but a different category of business from that selected in 2019. Finally, back in 2017, question 1A asked students to define the term sole trader. Again, a different category from the following 2 years, and this was then built on with question 1B, which asked students to outline one reason why a business may choose to operate as a partnership rather than a sole trader. Across all 3 years, only 2 task words were used to assess this content: outline and define. Now, while this does not mean this will certainly be the case in the future, it does indicate a potentially predictable pattern.
For dot point 2, I've just got one key error to highlight. Every type of business aims to make a profit as a business objective. Even a social enterprise. Without a profit, they cannot benefit a community through any kind of program or service.
Dot point 2, business objectives, has only appeared once in the past 3 years on an exam paper. Back in 2018, students were asked to describe a business objective other than to make a profit that would be relevant to 123 childcare. While a relatively easy question, it did catch out some students who had relied upon their objective to make a profit as their preferred response to these sorts of questions. Suddenly, they could no longer use it, so this was the perfect example of why it's so important to learn every category listed in a knowledge dot point on the study design. They are all fair game on the final exam.
For dot point 3, if you've been asked to explain how 2 stakeholders' interests conflict with one another, It's important to get full marks by first explaining the interests of one stakeholder, followed by the interests of the second, and then starting a new sentence where you highlight how those two things obviously conflict. Generally speaking, students who try to achieve all three of those things in a single sentence lose out on marks, and they can't possibly get 3 or 4 marks for a single sentence answer.
Dot point 3, characteristics of stakeholders, did not appear on the 2019 paper, but did in the 2 years prior. In 2018, students were required to outline the interests of 2 relevant stakeholders of Ocean Skate Hub. Explain how these interests may conflict. Using the sentence starters I provided earlier was the easiest structure to obtaining full marks for this question. Lastly, back in 2017, this content was assessed by asking students to analyse the impact that the reduction of the level of wastage may have on suppliers and one other stakeholder. This sort of question requires students to give a concrete statement as to whether the impact was positive or negative for each of their chosen stakeholders, and explain why. If you're looking for further practice on this dot point, it was also included in the previous study design, so you can find examples of questions back in the 2014, 2013 and 2010 VCE exam papers.
Okay, so that has been part 1 of my Common Mistakes series. If you've got any questions, leave them below. Otherwise, give this video a thumbs up, and as always, hit that subscribe button. I really look forward to supporting you through the rest of the school year. Bye!